folks. Hey, welcome to the program. We have Mr. Mark West on the line. He's a libertarian, and he's running for governor. Mark, welcome back to the show.
Paul, thanks so much for having me back on, man. I appreciate the opportunity.
Absolutely. It's always good to talk to you. I think the last time you were on the program, I was actually in your hometown of Batesville doing a live remote. Is that right?
Yes, it was. Well, Josh Waters had me on last week, but the last time I've been on with you, yes, you were here in Batesville, and we were talking politics then, and here we are dealing with the dirty and the ugly today.
Yeah. Well, I know we really are, and I guess I would just love to get your take on all of this. I mean, we have essentially the whiteboard last week said the moral low ground, and the reason it did is because we do have a lot of people that switched, quit voting for Democrats and voted for Republicans. I guess really based on the idea that they were the party that it stands for more morality or those sorts of things. And yet here we are, those in leadership who are Republicans are being, caught stealing from the taxpayers. What's your response to that, Mark West?
Well, I think that this here just shows us how deep the swamp really is and how far its tentacles reach. No party is immune from it. This is where libertarians, this is where we come down on government. We have this understanding, of course, me as a pastor, I understand that all have sinned and we're all sinners, and I've never understood how we somehow believe that because we elect people to a government office, that somehow they magically are going to become not sinners, and suddenly they're going to be immune to all the influences that normal people are. This level of corruption, though, that's being exposed, I'm concerned that it may just be the tip of the iceberg, and that as we go through this election season, we're probably going to see more and more of it just kind of trickle. As Donald Trump in the last campaign talked about Hillary, there was just this drip, 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 and I think we're going to see this drip, drip, drip coming out of Little Rock, and what we've seen this week, this whole lobbyist scandal with Rusty, it's hitting people around ASA. It's hitting Jared with the Teach for America thing. I mean, it's hitting a little bit everywhere. It runs deep. You talk about your whiteboard. I've got a whiteboard that I keep in my office, and we track the polls with it. And what I have is I've got, using the latest poll, I've got corruption sitting at 87% of the vote, and the vote sitting at 13%. And I think we can do better than that.
Okay, so you're telling me that you're taking the polls, and so you're saying the people who are voting for ASA plus the people who say they're voting for the Democrat Jared Henderson is 83%, and you're saying that that's 83% vote for corruption.
87%. Yeah, that's a vote for corruption.
Wow.
They're both involved and tied up in it, and the only way to get rid of it is to vote for something that is totally different. And right now, I'm the only option that's going to be on the ballot that is going to be totally different. And, we are working on a plan because we know that Hendren and his commission are going to come out today, and they're going to come out with a way of trying to slap legislators on the wrist and pat them on the back, say, try better next time, maybe don't get caught next time. How about that? What we want to do is try to get real ethics reform pushed through the legislature. I'm going to be reaching out to just a little preview. I'm going to be reaching out to Senator King and Senator Linda Collins Smith. I know they both lost. They're both. I hate that because they were so good, but I know that they were both working on ethics legislation this last session, and I'm going to talk to them and try to get them to help me write up a ironclad ethics legislation bill that's got teeth to it. Some of the things I want to see is if you've been involved in these corruption scandals, you're going to have prison time. I want to see the money you received in bribes paid back to the people of the state of Arkansas, and then I want to see a clause or a trigger in there that any legislation that was passed as a result of these bribes is up for immediate repeal, because taxpayers shouldn't have to pay for something that was bought by lobbyists. And that is one way that we can get right to that and start giving that money back to the citizens.
Mark, that's a great point.
I think it's time we ask ourselves if we still know the freedoms that were intended for us by the Founding Fathers.
They seem to be in full-scale retreat from spending cuts and are talking about raising people's taxes again. And I have only one thing to say to the tax increasers. Go ahead, make my day.
If we lose freedom here, there's no place to escape to. This is the last stand on earth. Those who would trade our freedom for security have embarked on this downward course. Whether we believe in our capacity for self-government or whether we abandon the American Revolution and confess that a little intellectual elite in a far distant capital can plan our lives for us better than we can plan them ourselves.
Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell is on now.
Welcome, ladies and gentlemen. This is the intersection of conservative ideas and reality, where we are building a liberty machine. We want you to be a part of that. One of the ways you can do that is to call us or text us, 870-275-9799. You heard the lady. My name is Paul, and man, what a day that we have. We're going to get to a lot of stuff today, a lot of stories. I'm going to do a little rundown here, and then we're going to come back and visit each one of these in depth later. Coming up at the bottom of the next hour at 7:33, we'll be talking with Senator Brian King. Senator Brian King, of course, has been outspoken for a very long time about all of the corruption, coining the term Medicaid mafia. We now know really that is very accurate, probably a lot more accurate than many of us are comfortable with. It is a reality in the state of Arkansas, and we are continuing to watch corruption. And we're also going to talk about the vote yesterday in the Arkansas Senate, the governor's nephew proposing rule changes for the Senate to adopt to try to make these guys a little more honest, to try to make these guys more ethical. So I'll talk to Brian King about that at 7:33 as well. And well, I predict it'll be a good interview. It's always good to talk to Senator Brian King. We will cover a little. Well, I mean, there's really not much to cover in this next story. You do have the citizens of District 8, Fort Smith, went to the polls in the Republican runoff to replace convicted Senator Jake Files, who pled guilty and is sentenced to 18 months 2 days ago. That his replacement will be State Representative Matt Pitch, who won by 84 votes against Frank Glidewell. So now we sit back and we wait and we watch and we see. Do we have more of the same? Are we going to have more of the same? Are they going to continue to screw this up? Or are they going to actually try to fix it? That's my mentality. Matt Pitch receiving 2,069 votes to Frank Glidewell's 1,985 votes, a difference of 84 votes. It's pretty close, actually. The telephone number, if you want to call us or text us today, 870-275-9799. Coming up at 6:33 this morning, we'll be talking with Mr. Dan Borum of the Great Patriots of Act 746. We will be talking with him about good government and this Attorney General opinion. That's right, ladies and gentlemen. Attorney General Leslie Rutledge has, in fact, finally, after 6 months, responded to Senator Linda Collins-Smith's request asking if there's any penalty, any direct penalty associated with carrying a weapon without a license, a concealed handgun license, or what I refer to as a permission slip. She has finally responded. And I would say generally it is very disappointing. I can't wait to talk to Dan Borum and some others about this, but I've got the letter in front of me. Why don't we just get to it and read it? Dear Senator Linda Collins-Smith, or Dear Senator Collins-Smith, Leslie Rutledge writes, you have requested my opinion as to whether there is a provision of Arkansas law that expressly provides a penalty for carrying a concealed handgun without a license. There is no such provision. Now, it would be great if the letter just stopped there. Thank you for your question. Well, have a nice day. But it does not stop there. But I will say, the admission is from the Attorney General of the state of Arkansas, Leslie Rutledge, says there is no penalty. So if you carry a weapon, if you're carrying a weapon in this state without a permission slip from the government, without going to the dog and pony show, there is no penalty in the law for doing so. Now, that's a big admission. However, the Attorney General's opinion goes on and claims that things are really confusing, though. And my point is, what I think is no, I think things are confusing for the status quo. I think if there is any confusion, it's manufactured confusion. It's a kind of a psychological warfare that's been activated against the people of Arkansas to make us think that whatever's in our Arkansas Constitution that guarantees our human right of self-defense doesn't apply, because sometime in the 90s we said, you know what, we're really scared of guns all of a sudden, and we want you to check in with the government and pay the government money, and we will sell you your right back to you, and we won't harass you if you'll just jump through these hoops. And I think with Act 746 and the decriminalization of firearms and the possession of them in the state of Arkansas now, the law actually, there's been a massive amount of freedom transferred from the government back to the people when it comes to your Second Amendment rights. And I don't think law enforcement or the Marble Palace, they were not put on notice when this was passed back in 2013 because they didn't actually know, they didn't actually read the bill. But you had Denny Altis who slipped this in there and crossed out this word and added this word, and all of a sudden the burden of proof on the government to convict somebody of carrying a weapon is extremely high now. But they didn't get the approval of the Marble Palace, and so that's the confusion. The confusion is trying to explain to the overlords that control things down there how in the world this happened, and we still don't have their blessing, I guess, to exercise our Second Amendment rights free from having to have a permission slip. I'm going to continue with the Attorney General's letter, but I just had to get that first part in there. Half of this job for me is personal therapy. I don't know. I don't know if I don't know how much progress we're making, but I feel better when I get to say what I want to say. So, again, Linda Collins Smith asking the question, does Arkansas law expressly provide a penalty for carrying a concealed handgun without a license? Leslie Rutledge writes, there is no such provision. So the answer is no, it does not. There is no penalty. But she goes on and she says, there are, of course, express penalties associated with carrying a concealed handgun into certain limited locations. Okay, well, that wasn't part of the question, and everybody knows that. We know that you can't carry a weapon when there's a sign posted in front of a private business that says no weapons allowed, that's the private property owner's prerogative to determine what kind of weapons policy, if any, they want to have on their property. We know that, in government buildings and things like that, there's no guns allowed, that's the law. And we could have a human rights discussion on that, but yeah, we get it. We're trying to move the needle towards freedom here. I feel like that's what the whole point of this letter was. But the Attorney General goes on. She says, but I understand your question to focus only on the more generic situation of an average citizen walking down a public sidewalk with a concealed handgun. She writes, it is incredibly important for Arkansans to have a complete and accurate picture regarding the potential consequences of carrying a concealed handgun without a concealed carry license. Given the current state of the law, it is not entirely clear whether it is lawful to carry a concealed handgun without a concealed carry license. Stop. She just said there is no such penalty. There is no penalty for doing it. But then in the next paragraph says, but it's not clear whether it's lawful. Well, how can it be Madam Attorney General, how can it be unlawful if there's no penalty in the statute for breaking the law? It would suggest that it is lawful and there's no penalty for it. There's no law that says I'm allowed to sit on my front porch and drink iced tea, but there's no law preventing it. And it's sad that it's sad that we have government officials that don't understand that basic concept of, enumerated powers in a limited government. It's not entirely clear. It is very clear. It's been clear since 2013, and there have been activists going on marches with their guns saying first it was open carry, and this is the second phase, and it's making the Arkansas State Police and their revenue, the revenue cow of getting people convinced, getting people indoctrinated that they have to check in with the government to get their license back, to get their rights back. And the Arkansas State Police, I don't know if they just won't get on board with it, but there's still a reason for having a concealed handgun license, even if what I'm saying is true, and it is, that you don't have to have one, according to the statute. There's still a great benefit of having one if you want to travel outside of the state of Arkansas because of reciprocity laws. So I have a concealed handgun permit issued by the state of Arkansas, and I have it so that when, I go down to the beach or something, I'm able to carry it with confidence, knowing that if I get pulled over by some, good old boy Mississippi State Trooper, that I'm legally allowed to have this weapon in my car with me, protecting my family. I'm not going to be harassed. But they won't get behind that idea, because that would still, in a way, protect a lot of their revenue, because people would be renewing for that very reason. A lot of people travel outside of the state of Arkansas at least once a year, are entering in the states around us. But she goes on. Moreover, and relatedly, it is not entirely clear whether carrying a concealed handgun without a concealed carry license will expose a citizen to conviction for the offense of carrying a weapon. Legislative clarification is certainly warranted. So now, the Attorney General had an opportunity to really set the record straight and give law enforcement proper guidance here. And now what she's doing is she's inviting the Senate Judiciary Committee to completely gut Act 746, much like they gutted, or much like they destroyed, they messed up everything with what was a simple law to allow a professor to carry if they had a concealed handgun license on a state college campus. Now they have the enhanced carry garbage, and they have it all because of Asa Hutchinson not being pro-Second Amendment enough. And I am legitimately worried, and I think every Arkansan who cares about your Second Amendment rights, as the law stands now, you have more freedom exercising your Second Amendment right than you had before 2013. And I am very worried now with Governor Asa Hutchinson at the helm and likely going to be in office for another 4 years, what he will do to the state of carrying a weapon here in this state. I'm very concerned about it, because these guys are in a position now where they get to define what's good, and their definition of good is anything they attempt to do is good. The good old boy system, anything they attempt to do is good and righteous, and anybody that says otherwise is unrighteous and bad. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is terrifying. It really is. And it's actually antithetical to many of the, I would just say, I guess I would say religious and theological concepts that many people, claim to profess. This idea that, we get to define what is good, and if you're against us, then you are bad, versus this. And I was talking to somebody about this the other day, and I want to talk to Mr. Dan Borm about this. But this, Second Amendment aside, this is happening, everywhere, and here's the difference, and it's really not a subtle difference. It's a very stark difference, okay? they are protecting the good old boy system. We're seeing this with the corruption and everything else. I know they're trying to have the illusion of integrity, or they're trying to to put these ethics rules out there. And there are some good things in the ethics rules. We've talked about that. Okay. But if what I just described is true, that is a vast, meaning we're the good guys, we're the good old boy system, we declare what is good, and we declare what is bad. And everything we do is good for the most part. Everything, and if you come against us, then you're assaulting our integrity or anything else. That is that's a very totalitarian concept that our government is running under right now. I really do believe that, versus the other side, which would be my side, which would say, no, we have to have everybody checking everybody constantly, because none of us are able, by our own decision-making, to declare what is good and what is not good. I mean, we're in terms of when we're the deciders, or we're the ones defining it. No. That's where our corrupt human nature comes in, and it's never going to work out well, especially for the people we claim to serve. There are Arkansas politicians like that, by the way. There are Arkansas politicians like that. If you say one word of criticism to them, they think that you are attacking the very fiber of what is good in this universe. A lot of people might call that being thin-skinned. We're going to take a break. I'm disappointed in this Attorney General opinion, this answer to Linda Collins Smith. I think it's now inviting the legislature to come in and gut the status quo. These people, really what this stems from is that these people want to have a law for everything, right? They want to have a law granting you permission for everything based on this mentality, right? So because the state of Arkansas gun law and the statute on possession of a weapon is decriminalized because of the burden of proof that's on the state, the burden of proof that they have to get to, meaning they have to prove that you had the weapon and that you are going to do something illegal with it against another person. That's a very high burden of proof. But see, that just doesn't... The generation in control now and the generation before that, something happened when, and they were basically... raised to believe that the government is the arbiter of people's rights. And something happened with them. And because of that, they can't handle a world where you have freedom and you don't have a law that grants everybody a right on every specific thing, whether it's drinking tea on your front porch or carrying a weapon. And they have this gut reaction to want to, in order for them to feel good about it, they have to have a law that says they can do X, Y, and Z, that they can, get up out of bed every morning. Well, there's a law that says I'm allowed to do this. And that is what we're facing here. We're facing a mentality where people kind of have just got this this Stockholm syndrome when it comes to government and the laws that they think we have to have. We don't need so many of these laws, and we don't need the government granting us our unalienable individual rights. They come from God. Back in a minute.
In Arkansas, every single hour there is a politician not getting what they want. For some, it's an absolute
nightmare. The sleepless nights wondering if progress will ever come. Lying awake pondering how to grow government in this political climate. Asking questions like, why don't my constituents want to pay a few cents more in taxes? Everyday politicians feel abused and neglected. These politicians are starving for power. They're hungry, confused, and they don't understand why no one seems to care. Will you be a patriot and commit today to help these poor, starved for power public officials? It's simple. All you have to do is commit to stay silent and never dissent or stand in the way of your politicians' rise to power. Never speak up or get engaged to stop the growth of government. By committing to these simple steps, you will ensure the life of your politician will be filled with contentment and the respect they are desperately seeking, as well as campaign contributions from lobbyists.
This message brought to you by Aristocrats Serving Arkansas.
PHP Parody. Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell is building a liberty machine. Find out more at conduitnews.com.
I want to go over more of these ethics rules again coming up at 7:05. Headline Michael Wickline, the overhaul of the ethics rules did approve the Senate. They did approve the Senate. There was one dissenting vote. It was Senator Alan Clark. I'll talk about his dissent because it's a reasoned one, because this is moving really fast, and it does it well. The reason this is what always happens. I think Alan Clark is wise. Senator Clark is wise to the idea that every time there's something that happens in Arkansas government that gets the mainstream media aware and it makes the Republican leadership look bad, or there's a big thing coming down the pike, whether it's we got to end Obamacare, but convince the conservatives we're going to end it, but not really. When it Medicaid expansion, or whether it comes to we've got members that may actually be autonomous and they might put some tax policy in that's going to make Republicans look bad because they're not really conservative, and the governor doesn't want to lower taxes and blah blah blah, but he wants to go with the task force. Whatever it is, there's always, we never slow down and actually talk about it. We always have somebody that grabs the ball and leads the parade over here, and I think Senator Alan Clark, this is just my speculation, but I think Senator Alan Clark voted no against it because it would be nice to, you could have passed Senator Linda Collins Smith's bills, or you could have passed Senator Brian King's bills instead of adopting these rules. According to reports, Senator Alan Clark seems to be in favor of the ethics committee that they're going to form, but that committee should come back to the full chamber and recommend changes after they've met and they've discussed what needs to happen, instead of just having this rule change, this knee-jerk reaction because the mainstream media is finally paying attention. Now, they want to act like, the leadership wants to act like, no, we've been working on this for a long time. Well, after you met with the FBI, you might have had the idea that we're going to have to do something because the reputation here is just, our reputation's terrible. What about the Marble Palace? What about the Marble Palace is sending so many people to prison? What about the Marble Palace culture made Rusty Cranford try to have a New Jersey witness murdered? What about that culture? It really seems like Arkansas has been set up to fail since Al Capone made Hot Springs his, southern getaway. Hey, folks, we're trying to build the Liberty Machine. as you hear me talk about all the time. One of the best ways to build this Liberty machine is to get our content and to get Conduit News Radio out to more people, to make them know who we are and what we're talking about. So I had an idea. What you see here is the 2018 Arkansas Democrat Gazette Best of the Best Reader's Choice Awards. And it says here, let your voice be heard during the Arkansas Democrat Gazette's annual Best of the Best contest. Central Arkansas residents can vote for their favorite restaurants, salons, and more. Well, they can also vote for their favorite radio host. So for those of you listening in Central Arkansas, I would encourage you to go and fill out the Best of the Best. As you can see right here, you get to the Best Local Radio DJ. You know what? Just the fact of getting nominated. Now, you have to fill out at least 10 slots in order for your nominations to be considered. So make sure you're educated about where is the best golf course, in your opinion, in Central Arkansas. But if you'll just put my name in there, I think just being nominated would give Conduit News a platform to get in front of other people, to get in front of new listeners, and because that's exactly what we're trying to do. We're trying to get in front of as many new people as we possibly can, because knowledge is power, like you've always heard us say. Thomas Jefferson said, an educated citizenry is indispensable to the proper functioning of a republic. So I would encourage you, this is just an idea, one way you could help build the Liberty machine. And a matter of fact, I just tweeted something very similar to that right before you came on, because I saw somebody on listening on Facebook who said it. Tim on Facebook wrote something, and I kind of made a variation of it. So the question is, should the laws be revisited? So let's say Jeremy Hutchinson leaves office, whether he resigns or he just doesn't go back. Should the laws that Jeremy Hutchinson was paid to pass be revisited so the people don't continue to suffer after he's left office? And you're essentially saying, yeah, absolutely, they should be revisited.
Yes, that is something in the legislation that I'm going to push for if I'm elected. We are going to ask that any bills that have been passed that were the result of any type of lobbying or consulting, because I know they use that word consultant to try to get around the idea of lobbyist. That's something else we're going to clarify, is that any of this work is wrong, and you shouldn't be having these illicit revolving door relationships. Any legislation that has been passed because of these type of relationships is going to be put up for review and for repeal, because the taxpayer shouldn't have to pay it. If it was bought by lobbyists, it should not be paid for by.
Determined to drain the swamp in Little Rock, it's Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell.
All right, here we go, ladies and gentlemen. This portion of the program, welcome back, is brought to you by the great patriots of Act 746. They are on a mission to educate the people of Arkansas on your Second Amendment rights based on what the law says. And that has to do with constitutional carry, permitless carry. You can look them up on Facebook.com. Just type in the search bar, Patriots of Act 746, and ask to become a part of their growing group today. Here to talk more about this is Mr. Dan Borum with the Patriots of Act 746. Dan, welcome back to the program, sir.
Good morning, Paul. How you doing today?
I'm doing well. I am doing well, and I wish this Attorney General opinion had just not been what it is. I don't know. I'm kind of frustrated about it. Have you read it?
I've read it about 3 different times now, and I've read through it. The first time I read through it, I just read through it kind of quickly. And then the second time I slowed down and tried to read it a lot more carefully. And then the third time I was trying to read it line by line, word by word. And I just came out scratching my head. And I kind of started laughing. I was just thinking about Senator Linda Collins Smith reading this opinion when she first received it, and possibly the look on her face. Bless your heart, Miss Rutledge. we all see that you didn't even throw the senator a bone. I mean, it's ridiculous. How can you say, starting out, that there is no penalty for carrying a weapon concealed without a permit, and then come back and say that the courts will possibly see you carrying a weapon concealed without a permit as that being unlawful intent? Now, what she said is, if I go out with my family to a restaurant and I have my weapon concealed and I do not have a permit, she is saying that I am going out with the intent to harm someone or possibly kill someone.
Yeah.
Rather than protecting my family. Are you kidding me? How in the world can a court say that you had unlawful intent because you didn't have a permission slip from the government?
Well, yeah, and
then,
in order to have unlawful intent, though, and by the way, they have to prove that. It doesn't say anywhere in there that you're doing harm. I mean, you're doing harm against another person. So you're saying that she is arguing that not having the concealed handgun is evidence that you're going to harm another person, and that is legal gymnastics right there, mental gymnastics to do that. And she's the one that's now made it more unclear, and actually is making people less safe because now they don't know if they can defend themselves or not.
Well, I'll tell you what, I called a mutual friend of ours yesterday evening, Mr. Tim Loggins, and talked to him for about 30 minutes concerning this opinion. And I highly value Tim's expertise in this matter, being retired law enforcement. I tell you what, I totally agree, and I agree with what you said this morning. This is by plan. She has done this by plan. She has thrown a bone to legislation to gut 746.
Yep.
This and here's another thing. I just wonder. I'm curious as to how long this opinion has been on her desk. I wonder how long it's been sitting there. Do you think she just recently wrote it?
Well, I'm not sure if she recently wrote it or not. I definitely think that there was some consultation with other attorneys to try to figure out how to do this, and it might have been on her desk for a while. But this opinion, this opinion certainly took a lot of strategy, in my opinion, to set it up the way it's been set up for them, like you said, to really take away our Second Amendment rights, because right now we have a lot of freedom concerning that according to the law. I mean, she says right there is no penalty. There is no penalty for carrying a weapon.
Exactly.
And then she says, but
right.
And nobody's ever even thought of this before. Like, nobody has ever even speculated, no legal mind has ever speculated that if you were to carry, though, it might be, without a permit, it might be seen as you're going to do somebody harm with that weapon. I mean, she is now trying to redefine what the burden of proof is to fit the Arkansas State Police Marble Palace, revenue agenda.
You hit the nail right on the head, Paul. That is exactly correct. And another thing, I saw there are things that she said that, yeah, that was right. But then she spins it, and she comes back around and flip-flops to the other side. And then she wants to use Supreme Court cases. There hasn't been a Supreme Court case since 2013. And when she tried to use her Supreme Court case argument, she didn't even list what case that was. And in order for people to research, such as, for example, Smith versus the state of Arkansas or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and also she said in that it carrying a concealed weapon without a permit could be probable cause to be arrested by a law officer.
Well, how?
Okay.
How?
How in the world does he know without violating your Fourth Amendment right?
Yeah.
How can he do it? It's unbelievable to me. And then in the very end, if you read the fine print at the very end of her letter, she said, I believe that we should be able to open carry, Arkansans should be able to open carry or concealed carry, that we should have constitutional carry. But that's not what her letter says. Mm-hmm. And she has set this whole scenario up. I'll tell you what, we know for a fact that Representative Ballinger tried to run a bill through in the last session to, quote, clarify 746 or to make it clear when we know it was to gut it.
Mm-hmm.
What she's done is thrown a bone back out to the legislation in the upcoming session in 2019 to gut 746. I guarantee you that she has carefully crafted and designed this opinion in order to appease, based upon who was elected. She waited for this opinion to come out based upon who won in these high-profile Senate races and in the representative races, and knowing for sure who came out winning in the governor's race, and then to issue this opinion. And so,
yeah, I mean,
that's exactly what has happened.
Yeah, it's if there's a piece of legislation filed next year to, quote, clarify Act 746, you can rest assured it will likely be to completely gut it and to give control of your Second Amendment rights back to elites and people that don't trust individuals with weapons. This is the part of the opinion on the second page that I found interesting, Dan Borum. She says, of course, a person arrested for a violation of 5-73-120, meaning the statute we're talking about. So if you were arrested for unlawfully carrying a weapon, that person, she writes, could argue that the fact he was carrying a concealed handgun without a concealed carry license does not justify a presumption that he had the intent to attempt to unlawfully employ the handgun as a weapon against a person. She writes, but it is my responsibility to advise that, based on the current state of precedent from the Arkansas Supreme Court, there's a real chance such an argument could fail, and the courts will apply a rebuttable presumption of malintent. How? It's like she straddles the fence, just like Asa straddles the fence on every issue. I mean, she basically says, you know, you could argue that you weren't attempting to unlawfully employ by just having a weapon on or about your person, but she says, but, you know, maybe not. It's almost like it's a contrived. She's saying that things are muddy and unclear, but it seems it's contrived to me.
Paul, she is straddling the fence, and I'm going to go ahead and say it. Here's the case. I was just recently reading an article. Actually, it was news that came out on CBS, and the whole center of attention was Attorney General Leslie Rutledge. And this, we have this conglomeration of attorney generals, Republican attorney generals across the nation that have their little club that meet in these really grand places, such as on a little island off the coast of South Carolina, with their, you know, lavish dinners for lobbyists to pay $125,000 to be there to meet with them personally in order to talk to them about court cases coming up. and she is deep state. She has went deep state on us. She is protecting the government. She is no longer there for the people, to protect the people. She is there for the government. She is there for ASA. She is there for the coppers of the Arkansas State Police. I'm calling her out. That's exactly what she's doing.
Well, okay,
she may have went into office with good intentions, but now she's deep state, and the only way she's going to come out of the corruption is to throw the towel in and say, I quit.
Okay, I want to talk about what you just said, because those are some those are some accusations. But you mentioned the CBS report. I have that report. Inside a lavish retreat where lobbyists donate for access to state attorneys general.
That's right, and she's the chair.
Yeah, and she is the chair, and I'm trying to get the name of this state attorney general who are top law enforcement officials. Raga or Raga?
Raga, R-A-G-A.
Okay. Hang on one second.
Republican Attorney General Association, maybe.
Okay, yeah, Raga, R-A-G-A. That's exactly right, and we got it up there. And Attorney General Leslie Rutledge is mentioned in this CBS report. Now, what I found interesting is how much money the NRA is donating. We asked 9 attorneys general. We saw there from Alabama, Arkansas, Florida, Georgia, Idaho, Indiana, North Dakota, South Carolina, and Utah if they attended. Only 3, Idaho, South Carolina, and North Dakota, would confirm they went. Arkansas Attorney General Leslie Rutledge is the chair of Raga, but when we asked her staff if she was there, they responded by email, we have nothing additional. Now, my question to you is the NRA for permitless carry?
No. I would be, and I'll apologize to the NRA if they prove me differently. I would love for them to prove me differently, but they are not. They're playing the good old boy game in Arkansas along with the rest of them. Look at the NRA's representative in Arkansas that helped put this mess together called enhanced carry. The NRA was for that. The NRA worked along with that. Mm-hmm. So I'm very disappointed with the NRA. And I don't believe the NRA has our best interest at mind. I'm with Gun Owners of America, the Gun Owners of America Association. That's who I place my money to. It's no longer with the NRA.
It's fascinating stuff. Let me ask you this. I think this opinion, I would put Attorney General Leslie Rutledge, this opinion here, right up there with ASA saying that we're a constitutional carry state, but check with your local prosecutor to make sure that they're not going to prosecute you. This is basically the same thing. It's not good government is what it is. It's not clear. It's not the government we want. We want some sort of certainty here where we know, whether we're going to go to jail or not, or get prosecuted or not, or get arrested or not, or in this case, we need to know if we're going to be harassed or not, in spite of what the law says. The law is clear. The law is clear, okay? Yeah, you can carry a weapon as long as you don't have the intent to unlawfully employ it.
That's exactly right. But, as bad as I hate to say it, we do need, before they gut 746 or before they try to gut 746, we need a Supreme Court case in Arkansas. We need it.
You mean we need a prosecutor to go ahead and try to charge somebody?
That's right.
Yeah, and then the court precedent says, well, you can't.
That's exactly right. That's exactly right.
But the prosecutors aren't bringing charges when people get falsely arrested because they read the law and they say there's no way we can get a conviction.
They know.
I can't read this guy's mind and know whether or not he was carrying to commit a crime against somebody else. We don't have telepaths.
That's exactly right. I understand, a law enforcement officer sees someone pacing back and forth. He sees that he's got a weapon on him. He's pacing back and forth in front of a McDonald's talking to himself. He's pulling at his hair. Okay, if I'm law enforcement, I'm fixing to go check this guy out. I can see he's not in his right mind.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to go and I'm going to confront him. But just an average citizen like yourself, Paul, like myself, I'm with my family. I'm not with my family. I just walk in to a place that doesn't prohibit carrying a weapon, and they just come up to me and say, hey, I need to see you. No, sir. You leave me alone.
Yep.
The law's clear.
So, Dan, before this Attorney General's opinion came out, and I think it was dumped out on the website on Friday, so kind of missed it for a while, we were going to have you on. We're going to talk a little bit about, I guess, government-controlled socialized medicine and how that might affect your Second Amendment rights. And you text me that, and it intrigued me. I'm like, well, Dan Borum, how do you think this government involvement in our health care could affect our Second Amendment rights?
That's something that I have thought about for a long time, and I want to tell you what sparked my attention to that is back during the presidential race, during the primary, when Dr. Ben Carson was one of the candidates for the Republican to be a Republican nominee. He, being a fabulous mind and one of the greatest doctors, neurosurgeons in our country, he said that he has watched men who were extremely wealthy on their deathbed who would give anything to live one more day. And he said socialized medicine is nothing more than to control the population and to take away the rights of the population. And when I started thinking about that, I would say, you know what, I'd rather die than to give up my rights. Okay, I can say that for myself. But can I say that for my child who may be suffering with cancer, my child that may be suffering with whatever disease that may come along, or just simply a broken leg, or my wife that suffers with rheumatoid arthritis? And to say, okay, the only way that I can have medical attention for my child or for my family is for me to prove that I am willing to give up my Second Amendment right. Look at what's already happening in Arkansas with the medical marijuana. Okay? Medical marijuana for a cancer patient to help them relieve nausea, to help them relieve some pain, is probably a better choice than look at the poison they're putting in cancer patients to kill the cancer. Medical marijuana is nothing in comparison to the poison they're putting in our bodies. Okay? Now, already, if you have a prescription, or if you're going to get a prescription for medical marijuana in Arkansas, then you cannot own a gun.
Wow.
So, right there, that tells you that down the road, people say, oh, it'll never happen. I'm telling you, if they get this socialized medicine all across the nation and completely do away with any chance of private medical insurance, it's coming down the pike. You better believe it. I'm telling you.
So it's kind of like
You're
it's
right
kind of
on
like
the front window.
yeah, it's a leverage. It's kind of like if you want your highway funding, then you're going to make the legal drinking age, 21 or older. And so if you want to be dependent on the government for your health care needs, then you're also going to be dependent on the government for your protection, and we don't want you to own a gun either. Dan, that sound logic in terms of the pitfalls of big government. It's a slippery slope, and that is actually very, very sound, and I have never thought of that.
Well, I'm going to tell you what, Paul. We the people better get out of this apathetic state. I'm very disappointed in Senate District 8. 4,054 voters showed up in the greater Fort Smith area to vote in this special election for Senate between Glidewell and Pitch. Okay? 4,054 people in the greater Fort Smith and Greenwood, Arkansas area. That's all that showed up to vote. The apathy is killing us, not only in this state, but all across the nation. And if we don't get our heads out of the sand, we're going to lose this thing. We're going to lose it for our posterity. And then we're going to turn around one day and look back and go, what happened? I want to tell you what happened. We, the people, didn't give a hoot. We stuck our head in the sand. We said, it doesn't directly affect me. I don't care. I'd rather go lay on the beach. I'd rather go down here in my swimming pool rather than go down and boat. You get what you deserve. And if this is what happens, I'm gonna, I'm mad. I'm mad at the government, but I'm even madder at we the people because we have been too apathetic.
Dan Borum with the Patriots of Act 746, sir. It's always a pleasure to have you on.
Oh, thank you, and you all have a great day, and God bless each and every one.
God bless you, too. Dan Borum, everybody. Always love having him on. Folks, we're going to take a break, and again, it's the Patriots of Act 746. Go to Facebook, search for them, ask to be a member of their group, and become part of the online sensation today. Back in a minute.
Russellville-based firearms manufacturer Omega are making clones of the most notable German firearms in the world. These delayed rotor-lock firearms have been and are currently used by law enforcement and military worldwide. At Omega, they manufacture their guns right here in Arkansas and produce the best reproduction in the marketplace that comes with a complete 5-year warranty. At Omega, they take firearm manufacturing seriously and offer discounts to active and retired law enforcement. Whether you're using Omega firearms to defend the public, defend your family, or for target practice, Omega has your back. For pricing, go to omega-guns.com. That's omega-guns.com.
The intersection of conservative ideas and reality. Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell.
870-275-9799. Man, it's always good to talk to Dan Borum. I always really enjoy having him on. Folks, if you're just now joining us, we were going over the Attorney General's opinion, responding to Linda Collins Smith's question is there a penalty? Now, she specifically asked to not refer to, her old opinion, or, we don't want to know, really, we just want to know, is there a penalty in the law for carrying a weapon without a permit? And she answers that in the beginning of her statement, that there is no provision, there is no penalty for carrying a weapon without a permit. But then she goes on to say, in a very convoluted way, but everything is so unclear, and we need the legislature to make clarifications, which is a terrifying suggestion at this point, considering the amount of freedom that we have, and it's taken a while for the status quo to understand what the law says about your Second Amendment rights today, and how they are, more conducive to trusting the population with your human right to self-defense than other places. If the legislature were to revisit it now, they would take away our rights. I'm telling you, right now, they would make everything way more restrictive. We got to be aware of that. Now, they wouldn't say that. They would say that they're standing up for us, that they're representing us, that's what they would say, that they're pro-guns. They would say they're pro-guns while taking away your right to carry without harassment and prosecution. We've got one more hour coming your way next.
The news and talk of Northeast Arkansas. This is News Talk 101.3 FM and 12:30 AM KBTM Jonesboro, an EAB radio station.
the taxpayers of the state of Arkansas.
Yeah, that's. I think a lot of people are, excited to hear an idea like that. Now, I like how you say 87% corruption, Mark, because, I mean, what we found out in this plea with Milton Russell, Rusty Cranford, is this Teach for America situation. So the Democrat, Jared Henderson, is the executive director of Teach for America, and he gets $2 million from Governor Asa Hutchinson as a result of a bill that was passed or sponsored by his nephew, Senator Jeremy Hutchinson. And Milton Rusty Cranford was the lobbyist that Jared Henderson was using through all of this. And so it just seems like they're one big happy family is what it seems like to me. And we now know that because Rusty Cranford took a plea.
Yeah, this is one of those, Gary Epperson, he posts a lot on Facebook talking about Arkansas politics, where he spells Arkansas with K-E-N and S-A-W. I would change the K-E-N to K-I-N. It's all kin. They're all looking out for each other. They are one big family of corruption, and we need to stand up to them. And this governor's race gives us a chance to send a very clear message to them that this has got to stop, that Arkansas voters are paying attention. We see what's going on. We're tired of our tax dollars being spent on these things. We want to see change. And, and that's one of the other things I'm going to do when I talk to Senators King and when I talk to Linda is I want to know who in the state legislature blocked and opposed and fought their legislation when they tried to get it pushed. Because if I'm elected governor, I'm going to their hometowns and I'm telling their folks what they've done. And I'm going to make them famous in their hometowns for being legislators that fought ethics reform, that decided that they had a different set of rules than the average Arkansan does, and that they get special treatment that the average Arkansan doesn't get. And we're going to make them famous in their hometown. We're going to let the people where they're at home, where they're sharing their message the most to, we're going to let them know what they've been doing and how they have been a part of this corruption. And we're going to encourage those people to hold them accountable in the next election.
Yeah. We're talking with Mark West. He's a Libertarian candidate for governor. We are awaiting this press conference, Mark, coming up, I guess, around 11 o'clock. You mentioned Senator Hendren, Senator Dismang. Senator Hendren voted against Brian King's Medicaid disclosure bill, and now they're coming out and they're going to make some sort of ethics announcement. I'm told it's going to be a rule change of some kind, and required disclosure and that sort of thing, and then at a later date, maybe they'll come out with laws or something like that. I hope. I mean, listen. For the sake of the people, I hope whatever they propose is not just talk and not just bluster. And I'm assuming you would too. But it does certainly. Let me ask you this: do you find it just a little bit hypocritical that the leadership is now concerned with this because the mainstream media is concerned with the corruption, the culture of corruption at the Marble Palace? I mean, it's like, where were they this whole time,
Well, there's the old saying, and I'm not sure where it started, but it was apparently somebody who knew what they were talking about when they said it. Coincidence is not real in politics. There's no such thing as coincidence in politics. These guys had their chance, and they fought it. They voted against it. They made sure that these changes didn't happen, because they didn't want it in the law. What they would rather do is come behind and try to set these rules up, because when you set rules and commissions up, you essentially have the crooks policing the crooks. And who do you think's really going to get in trouble in that system? I mean, this isn't going to go far enough. Yeah, great, they're going to change some rules, but when you're asking the crooks to police the crooks, you're going to wind up with more corruption. You're going to wind up with people getting slaps on the wrist. They're not going to put any teeth to it. The only way to put teeth into it is to put it into law, make the legislators pay back the bribes to the taxpayers, make the bills come up for being revisited and being repealed that have been pushed through this lobbyist money. This stuff has to happen. We already have it where we're punishing the lobbyists. So we need to start dealing with the legislatures, because from
I think it's time we ask ourselves if we still know the freedoms that were intended for us by the Founding Fathers.
They seem to be in full-scale retreat from spending cuts and are talking about raising people's taxes again. And I have only one thing to say to the tax increasers. Go ahead, make my day.
If we lose freedom here, there's no place to escape to. This is the last stand on earth. Those who would trade our freedom for security have embarked on this downward course. Whether we believe in our capacity for self-government or whether we abandon the American Revolution and confess that a little intellectual elite in a far distant capital can plan our lives for us better than we can plan them ourselves.
Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell is on now.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the program today. The phone number 870-275-9799. This is hour number 2. And you have found the intersection of conservative ideas and reality. We're building a liberty machine here, and we got to have your help to do it. Just by listening, you're a part of it. We're got a good hour for you today. I want to start with the headline here about the ethics reform proposal being accepted, being approved. Senator Jim Hendren, who is the governor's nephew, the next president pro temp, they successfully changed the rules. An overhaul of ethics rules approved by the Senate vote. That's the headline from Michael Wickline. Interestingly enough, Senator Alan Clark is the only audible dissenter. Let's figure out why. If you go to Alan Clark's Facebook page, here it says, "Today we passed rules making Senate ethics rules more strict and creating a Senate ethics committee. I was the only no vote," he writes. "I appreciate what leadership is trying to do and agree with most of the changes, but I don't believe anything this significant should be rushed into, and there is much that needs to be revised in the new rules. I would have preferred we only created the ethics committee and let them bring us back new rule suggestions. If we are going to be in a hurry, we could have adopted the bills proposed in the last session and made them law instead of rules. We didn't. There should be criminal penalties for serious infractions. For things that aren't serious infractions, like filing reports 4 times a year, I think we should leave alone. Making things more burdensome for honest people does not make dishonest people more trustworthy. As I said, leadership has the best of intentions. People probably want to see us do something now. I have found that thoughts and minds are much clearer when some time has passed from major shocks, though. We do not need more rules for the sake of rules. This country has too many rules and laws now." That's Senator Alan Clark as to why he was the only no vote on these rules. I mean, at this point, and this cannot be lost, I know people don't want to blame anyone in leadership for the current corrupt culture at the Marble Palace. The problem is Jake Files was in leadership. John Woods was seen as a mover and a shaker and a leader down there. Okay? I mean, that's the problem, is the people who are now trying to lead us out of this corruption are the ones who have been in leadership, in league with the good old boy system the whole time. And forgive me if I think if I'm a little skeptical of where your leadership abilities and talents are taking the state now. I think everybody should be that way, should feel that way. I mean, that's not to say, and I'm not saying that means that because one of your colleagues does something illegal and goes to jail, that means that you're in on it. That's not what I'm saying. What I am saying is that everybody knew and you did nothing then. Because why? You don't want to offend the governor's nephew by saying that you think he's behaving in an unethical way? You don't want to offend, Jake Files, a pillar of the community of District 8? How dare you? I'm the head of the Revenue and Tax Committee. How dare you suggest I would do something wrong? These rules that they're adopting operate on the assumption that a member is going to call out another member, is going to tattle on another member, or snitch would be what the kids say these days. Snitch on another member. They didn't snitch now. What makes you think they're going to snitch? I'm sorry, they didn't snitch then. What makes you think they're going to snitch now? I'm extremely skeptical. I hope there's some return to honest government. But I'm extremely skeptical because I know these people. I know their plays. I've watched them for what now feels like a long time, just such a long time. It's maddening, actually. If you show me the players, I can show you the play. I can tell you what they're going to do. Doesn't matter what issue it is. I can tell you what they're going to do. If the players are Asa, Dismang, and Hendren, and used to be Gillum, I can tell you what they're going to do. They're going to get the ball, hold it, and run out the clock so no one else can do anything outside of their control. That is the play. Because that's who these people are. They are the players. They don't want anyone else to play. They're ball hogs. They essentially, basically, we'll take the game of basketball, for example. They'll take a 10-person game, and they'll reduce it to 4 people. You know what I'm saying? And these four people get to act like that they're team players. They act like that everybody's involved. But it's much more of a performance, which essentially makes the legislative process, makes a mockery of it because it makes it just really a mere formality. This is an attempt to clean up what is really a public relations nightmare. Make no mistake about it. These people are more upset about the publicity they're receiving than they are of the actual crimes that have occurred. They're more upset about their reputations being trashed by the mainstream media. They're used to it if they're listening to this program, I'm sure. They're more upset about the mainstream media asking questions than they are about the actual crimes and the people being disenfranchised and having their money stole. Than they are worried about that, and that's the sad part about this all. Now, let's see, if you go to the Democrat Gazette, they have this report about it. They always got to reiterate, where all this came from. They mentioned Senator Jeremy Hutchinson. By the way, Senator Hutchinson still hasn't resigned. He should resign. People should call on him to resign. Can you believe that these ethics rules they were passed yesterday because of Senator Jeremy Hutchinson and what he's being accused of? But none of them will say, or very few people will actually say, that the reason they have the knee-jerk reaction is because the governor's nephew is in the headlines taking $500,000 in bribes, allegedly. Is that not fascinating? They won't actually admit that they're doing this as a knee-jerk reaction because of the governor's nephew. Instead, we hear things like, well, I've been working on these ethics rules for a long time. Clark questioned Hendren why the Senate didn't first create the ethics committee to develop a proposed rule change. Quote, I think the people deserve more, Hendren said, adding that He's worked on the proposed changes with others during the past few months. Since I've been here, 3 of my colleagues are going to prison pretty soon. We've got to start taking concrete action to right the ship. To right the ship. Here's a question. Has it ever been right since the Republicans have had control of the leadership? I think the answer is no. The first Republican president pro temp of the Obama era, when Republicans started taking control of Arkansas, was Michael Lamoureux. Need I say more? Michael Lamoureux, the guy that had lobbyists fund the Faith and Freedom Coalition. What is up with these Republicans using Christian institutions to give themselves money? I can't believe I'm just now realizing this. But you've got Michael Lamoureux that uses the Faith and Freedom Coalition to funnel himself $120,000. It was funded by lobbyists, nonprofit. They donate nonprofit. The nonprofit then uses Michael Lamoureux's a law firm, pays him $120,000. They only raised $140,000 that year. And the lobbyists, the Faith and Freedom Coalition, let's use it. What's up with Republicans using religion to enrich themselves? That's what John Woods and Mike and Neal and Orrin Paris and Randall Shelton, they were using a Christian college. And the idea, who's going to say no to a Christian college? It's a work college, and don't we want educational reforms? And also, oh, by the way, we're also ecclesia, the Greek word for church. And we're going to enrich these politicians and give them kickbacks for giving us government money, taxpayer money. Render to Caesar what is Caesar's, and launder the money through a Christian college to give the politicians that are in the Senate. It's very odd, isn't it? Doesn't it make you sick a little bit? As a Christian, it makes me sick a little bit. So, here we are. By the way, we're going to be talking with Senator Brian King coming up at 7:33. Matter of fact, let's take a break right now, because here's why. There's another piece I want to get into. I decided to read Mr. Mark Moore's piece over at arneighbors.org. He wrote this back on the 17th. Before they've passed the ethics rules, just his reaction to the ethics proposal, and it's pretty spot on and a little comical. I appreciate his healthy American skepticism of people who are in positions of power. We're going to take a break. This is Conduit News Radio. Back in a minute.
Good morning. Good morning. Congratulations, you have made it to the Bureau of Carefully Crafted Language, where we strive to offer politicians the very best in ambiguously specific language, the purpose of which is to allow our politician bosses to grow government and keep their constituents in the dark. This yields two beneficial outcomes. First, the government growing politicians stay in office. And second, we at the Bureau of Carefully Crafted Language get to remain in the shadows and get to keep our jobs. Now, it's time for technocrat training drills. Johnny?
Yes?
A politician wants to use the healthcare system to punish those who have and redistribute their wealth. What is the appropriate language to use in this situation to make an unpopular idea acceptable to the public?
I would emphasize that these ideas would make their healthcare more affordable and make sure the public understands if they already have adequate healthcare, nothing will change for them.
Very good, Johnny. Much progress since last time. Next up, let's have Susie. Susie, your politician has been caught in, dare I say it, a lie.
What kind of a lie?
It doesn't really matter, but in the spirit of the Bureau of Carefully Crafted Language, I will give you a good hypothetical scenario. Dozens of politicians have been thrown out of office for supporting a socialist healthcare program. So the remaining politicians get together and they pass a bill to, quote, end the program, end quote. But they really want to keep it. What should they do, Susie?
May I ask a question for more information?
Certainly.
Has the word lie been used by the political opposition?
Yes.
I know. They should change the name of the program. Maybe use the word works to make the sheeple think it's for working folk. Then they should go on the attack and get the public distracted. I would advise the politician to publicly question why our political dialogue has become so uncivilized and tell them to claim using the word lie, no matter how accurate, is a personal attack on his or her character. And if they admit to any wrongdoing at all, they must replace the word lie with words like misspoke, misstatement, misrepresent, or mislead.
Amazing! Excellent work, Susie. I feel like the student has really become the teacher. You will make a terrific addition to the Bureau of Carefully Crafted Language.
All hands on deck. This is a Bureau of Carefully Crafted Language emergency. Several politicians are scrambling after being exposed by some talk radio host. Let's move it, people. They need our help.
The Bureau of Carefully Crafted Language. You vote 'em in, and we keep 'em in. PHP Parody. Bringing you your daily dose of truth. It's Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell.
All right, the independent thinker, Mr. Mark Moore, over at his website, arneighbors.org, has his take on the ethics rules. I think this is pretty funny. He writes, I noticed that the state Senate was in a hurry to put in some new ethics rules while they still have enough members not under indictment to muster a quorum. Bear in mind, these are the same folks who in 2016 referred to us something that they called an ethics amendment, which deceptively claimed in the title that it was to establish term limits. What it actually did was greatly weaken already existing term limits. But the deceptive wording fooled enough people to get it passed. Hopefully we can do that this November. Talking about restoring term limits. We're going to be talking more about that as the days come on because you guys need to go and get the petitions. Not that was the only thing wrong with the so-called ethics amendment. It contained hidden language that could be used to have a chilling effect on anyone who wanted to run for a large office as an independent. It even included rules which, if they were caught misappropriating campaign contributions, gave them 30 days to pay back what they stole before the Ethics Commission could censure them. Thanks a lot, John Woods. That's right. Or wrong, he writes. If they get caught stealing, they have 30 days to pay it back before they can be penalized for stealing. That is actually in the law today, thanks to Senator John Woods, who is now going to jail, and he has been found guilty of other crimes. I consider this one a crime because it was so deceptive. These things don't enumerate all of my objections that the so-called ethics bill, or of the so-called ethics bill, but let's just say it was the most unethical ethics bill in my lifetime and leave it at that. The guy who wrote and sponsored it, John Woods, is now out of the Senate and on trial for taking bribes. He's been convicted of taking bribes. He goes on. In addition to all of that, the two senators most determined to do something about the huge corruption involving Arkansas Works, Brian King and Linda Collins Smith, were recently narrowly defeated in Republican Senate primaries by opponents who were heavily backed by the governor and enormous sums of money from some of the same special interests which are doing the looting. He references the Conduit for Action article had a good, he says, though not complete roundup of the corruption, but he references our article on the corruption. He writes, so you will excuse me if I'm more than a little skeptical at these proposals from the Senate on new ethics rules from the article which I linked to in the opening paragraph. For one thing, you cannot make rascals into honest men and women just by putting more rules on them. You have to do the hard work of ridding yourself of the rascals, and right now the people of Arkansas don't seem to have much appetite for that. This makes all of us victims, but too many of us are also accomplices. Now, it's well known Mark Moore is not a two-party system guy, and he blames the two-party system as a system that honorable people should no longer support. If we have to start something new ourselves, return to self-government, we should do that. But he goes on to write, let me give you an example from the article of something that raises red flags. The proposed rules also prohibit certain activities that involve conflicts of interest. Hendren described these changes as really the meat of this, end quote. For example, he said senator would be barred from seeking or taking a benefit other than official compensation for public duties under the proposed rule changes. So if someone pays you to do something in your role as a state senator, it would be an ethical violation. Mark Moore writes, they are making a rule against something that has not been part of the problem. The problem has been pay for jobs that are ostensibly not related to their role as senators. For example, please see this article called Worse Than the Revolving Door, where a senator takes a job spending money for an outfit that is appropriated indirectly by the senator himself. Yet this job is not related to his role as senator. The real graft has been from their being hired on as consultants or attorneys and getting paid all out of proportion of their work as such. That would not be banned under the proposed rule changes, according to Mark Moore. They would only have to disclose such payments, simply bringing corruption out into the open on the gamble that the voters of Arkansas are too ignorant, immoral, or blinded by party partisanship to care. Don't get me wrong, I favor the disclosure requirements, but I question the window dressing of an outright ban on payments related to one's official role, while consulting and attorney fees need only be disclosed. I foresee this having unintended consequences unless they make some reasonable exceptions. For example, if a Boy Scout troop wanted Senator Pureheart to come speak at their event or government policy, he would be banned from receiving mileage and hotel expenses or any other monetary benefit for doing so. This would have a chilling effect on his ability to perform such a service. Meanwhile, Senator Graft could continue to pull in six figures as a consultant for Pollute Corp so long as he disclosed they were giving him the money. And then there's this jewel. The proposal would create a 5-member select committee on Senate ethics appointed by the President Pro Tem, with 3 members in the majority party and 2 members in the minority party. Any senator who believed there is a violation of the Code of Ethics could file a complaint with the committee, which would investigate. The complaint would list the name of the accused, the accuser, the provision violated, and the description of the suspect activities. The Senate would be allowed to punish any violator with penalties ranging from a letter of caution to expulsion. He writes, this proposal would grant the President Pro Tem extraordinary power and freeze out any other party besides the 2 established ones or independents. And then he writes this, then he quotes, Hendren said he wants Senators Missy Irvin, Jason Rapert, David Wallace, Bruce Malek, and Will Bond to serve on the committee. Mark Moore says, Jason Rapert? Are you kidding me? Mark Moore writes, Jason Rapert thinks that disagreeing with Jason Rapert is an ethics violation, also an affront to God Almighty. That is Mark Moore's take on the knee-jerk reaction. They're doing something, trying to do something, want to be seen as doing something about the corruption we see in the headlines every single day. Again, I think they're more upset that their reputations are being examined by the mainstream media than they are of the actual crimes that have been committed against the people.
Hey, folks, we're trying to build the Liberty Machine, as you hear me talk about all the time. One of the best ways to build this Liberty Machine is to get our content and to get Conduit News Radio out to more people, to make them know who we are and what we're talking about. So I had an idea. What you see here is the 2018 Arkansas Democrat Gazette Best of the Best Reader's Choice Awards. And it says here, let your voice be heard during the Arkansas Democrat Gazette's annual Best of the Best contest. Central Arkansas residents can vote for their favorite restaurants, salons, and more. Well, they can also vote for their favorite radio host. So for those of you listening in Central Arkansas, I would encourage you to go and fill out the Best of the Best. As you can see right here, you get to the Best Local Radio DJ. You know what? Just the fact of getting nominated. Now, you have to fill out at least 10 slots in order for your nominations to be considered. So make sure you're educated about where is the best golf course in your opinion in Central Arkansas. But if you'll just put my name in there, I think just being nominated would give Conduit News a platform to get in front of other people, to get in front of new listeners, and because that's exactly what we're trying to do. We're trying to get in front of as many new people as we possibly can, because knowledge is power, like you've always heard us say. Thomas Jefferson said, an educated citizenry is indispensable to the proper functioning of a republic. So I would encourage you, this is just an idea, one way you could help build the Liberty Machine.
I believe that the public trust is a sacred trust. And if you have violated that trust, willingly violated that trust, then you should be seeing prison time. You should have to repay the taxpayers what you've stolen from them. And whatever bills you've done to take more tax money from them or to benefit special interests, that money needs to come back to the taxpayers.
Yeah.
We've had enough. There's no reason that we should have to sit idly by while these swamp creatures keep doing what they do. We need to drain the swamp in Little Rock, and that's one thing we're going to fight for if we do win the governor's race.
So we're talking with Mark West, the Libertarian gubernatorial candidate. Now, Mark, talk a little bit about the Libertarian Party, and what I mean by that is specifically ballot access. And if you get to a certain threshold, you guys aren't going to have to go get petitions next time for ballot access. Is that correct?
Right. We spend $30,000 to $50,000 every election cycle just to get on the ballot. In this governor's race, if I receive 3% of the vote in this,
exposing the truth and everything the Marble Palace establishment keep trying to cover up. It's Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell.
All right. Speaking of cover-ups, well, let's talk to the guy that tries to expose the cover-ups. We got Senator Brian King on the phone. Good morning to you, Brian.
Hey, good morning, Paul.
So let's talk a little bit about these ethics proposals, the rule changes yesterday. What are your thoughts on all that?
Oh, I mean, some of it, good. Some of it, concerning. See how it plays out and how it's used. I mean, but there was two glaring things that came out for somebody, and that you've covered it, and you have these, outlets that do try and expose things down there. And of course, you have the mainstream misleading media down there that doesn't cover it. I mean, but what about going back retroactively? What about who else is doing this? What about, whatever questions? I mean, it's like whatever's happened and has come out is concerning, but yet, there's nothing else. We just need to move forward, and everything's great, and we're all good people, and let's go.
Yeah, they want to act like this isn't some sort of cancer that has spread over a long period of time. To me, it just seems like, and the fact that when they had the press conference and they proposed the rules, and part of the rules are going to be tattling on other members. And, of course, nobody's been tattling at this point to the Ethics Commission or to the FBI, voluntarily. But yet Senator Hendren says, I really think our members will step up and do the right thing and tell on each other. And then the next question from the press was, well, are any of you willing to say that Jeremy Hutchinson violated these rules that you're about to put into place? And there was silence. Nobody was willing to stand up and say. And then they even and then he even said that Jeremy Hutchinson, what's been in the news about him, that's not the reason they're even doing these rule changes.
Yeah, well, I don't even. That's just the craziest thing I've ever heard. And the thing about tattling on other members, who's been out there saying, "Hey, something's been going on," even going back 3 or 4 years ago, and
you have,
yeah, nothing happened. I mean, they just kept ridiculing you. You're crazy. You're mean. That's why we have what we had up there in the GIF, in which all the Medicaid stuff is actually, the GIF stuff is minor compared to what's going on with the Medicaid stuff. And like I said, anybody in the bowl down there, you're going to make mistakes, screw up some bad judgments, different things like that. But the idea that you have somebody that got $500,000, okay, from one entity out there and didn't disclose it, didn't say anything about it. We already had rules in place that he should have disclosed it. And so I keep saying the same thing. There's not enough laws and rules that it's going to be, it's like the gun laws. When somebody wants to break it, I doubt very much, seriously, any rules or laws are going to stand between $500,000 and the two players that were involved in what has been named in these documents and the plea deal.
Mm-hmm.
So, you're just, again, trying to make it harder. Now, do you have to do stuff and make it harder for these people or show something? But when you have people down there that just continually act like this is not a problem, we didn't know this was going on. I mean, that's just a complete lie.
And that's my issue with it, and even some of the mainstream media, they were asking questions like, why did it take this long? Why are you just now doing this? And
well, I want to ask them, why did it take them so long? This has all been playing out for years down there. It was easy to see. It went on right in front of everybody. There was no secret about Jeremy Hutchinson and what he was doing and what he was being questioned and what was going on. It wasn't even an open secret. It was just there.
And yet, the leadership wants to act like this is news to them, and they want to maintain credibility as leaders. And it's just frustrating because we know that that's not the case. And I at least maybe some other media outlets besides me, or besides Conduit News, they're maybe figuring this out, but it's kind of a flash in the pan, and they move on to something else. They're not actually, kind of sticking with this. I mean, when you have the governor's nephew, $500,000 in bribes is what he's accused of by Rusty Cranford. Then we find out, the Gazette reported that Asa gave $2 million to his now Democratic opponent, Jared Henderson, his nonprofit Teach for America, as a result of a bill that Jeremy Hutchinson passed. And so it really kind of seems like it's all one big club down there, and the Democrat-Republican label is just that. It's just a label, nothing more.
Yeah, and I mean, they don't want to tell on one thing. It was just like during the whole Files thing, well, we need to, pray for Jay Files, which we do, and all of us need prayer, but yet, what about all the victims up there? I mean, what about the taxpayers? What about, you still have these multitude of unanswered questions out there that no one wants to go to. Is, give me more details on this $30,000 loan. I've been down there 12 years, and I didn't know lobbyists gave loans. I mean, that's news to me. What about the $80,000 wire transfer? And so you don't have anything, if you look at the amount of news coverage and stories that went on with the, John Woods and the GIF, and then you look at what has been done on everything else with Jeremy Hutchison, if there hadn't been things come out in the agreement, Jeremy Hutchison would still be going just as strong as he was.
Yeah. Do you have a comment? We're talking with Senator Brian King on why, for example, Rusty Cranford or Jeremy Hutchison has not been charged in Arkansas, and the only information that we really are getting is from this Western District Federal Court in Missouri?
I do not know.
Okay.
I mean, it's just you could go back to Gilbert Baker, you could go back to Michael Lamoureux, and how many times did I talk about how Michael Lamoureux gets a $120,000 consulting fee? There was something being said about that. Was there any call for investigation into that, questioning, anything like that? I think in one of the plea agreements there was things that Cranford that was alleged that he helped get somebody off and get a less prison time for murder. I mean, how much more, if they want to say tattletaling, did they need to have over the last 4 years that came out that all of a sudden this other stuff's going to be new? And, they handpick, select their committees down there to come up with the results or do what they want to do. I mean, that's just it. They don't pick a broad range or something like that. They pick who they specifically want. And, the reality is this Medicaid budget has grown substantially, and I've always said, not everybody voting down there is voting out of pure reasons to what they think the best citizens of Arkansas. You could sit down there and see it. It just went on. And like I said, Jeremy got a pass, got shielded, got covered the whole time while he was carrying this out. There is nobody in there, if you knew anything at all, knew there wasn't at least some things to be questioned.
Mm-hmm.
Nothing.
We're talking with Senator Brian King. Brian, you mentioned this earlier. I mean, from everything from budget numbers, I mean, you're always on top of things, asking the questions that nobody wants to hear asked, and they certainly don't want to answer it, because the answer, as we know, would reveal a lot of their plans to not be fiscally conservative. That's just on the numbers, and so, I mean, I'm sad that you're not going to be back down there this coming January to be able to ask those tough questions. But I just want to reiterate, not just on the numbers and the budget problems, but on this Medicaid mafia is what we're finding out, on this culture of corruption. You're always down there, and you're always telling everybody what the truth is. I'm just saying you are correct. The history is now showing all of your skepticism and all of your what they would describe as, you're just trying to hold them accountable. And you've been saying this the whole time, and here it all is. I still don't think we're at the bottom of the pit. We don't know who all this is going to ensnare. I personally hope Jeremy Hutchison takes a plea deal and rolls on somebody else. But I mean, does it feel? I don't know. Do you feel a little vindicated that all of this stuff is now coming out, and you've been saying it the whole time?
Yeah, I mean, not that I wanted to be vindicated, but yeah, absolutely. You don't know how many calls, text message, emails people said, well, you were right, and and it was substantial. I mean, like I said, he's accused of taking bribes in a document. Okay, he's going to get his chance to try and get out of it, but yet, if you sat down there, you could see it. It was just as plain as day on how it was being played out and what was going on. The problem was the silence of so many down there. I mean, they just kept seeing, and no matter what keeps coming out that the media can't keep under wraps, it just gets worse and worse, and it sees that it's growing. I mean, like I said, one entity that he received $500,000 in payments over. And then you see the other article that came out that when he was representing one of them, he didn't even show up in court. I mean, that would be like them paying me to be a farmer, okay, and raise you a crop of corn or cattle or something like that. Say, hey, you bought a load of cattle, Paul, and guess what? I'm supposed to deliver on November 30th, and guess what? I don't even show up. I mean, I don't know how this is not. Can you imagine if the same thing was Donald Trump Jr.?
Mm-hmm.
What would they be? I mean, what it would literally be going spastic on the national level, or if it was if it was Chelsea Clinton.
Yep.
I mean, let's just be fair to both sides. If this was that, you'd have all that. Down there, it's nothing.
Mm-hmm.
And once you allow this Medicaid mafia and all these money angles to keep going out, anytime you try and stop it, change their things, they've got it. I mean, if you spend $100,000, they're going to spend $300,000. You spend $200,000, they're going to spend $600,000. And until the money runs out, and you see the already we're taking in record amounts of tax dollars, record amounts, and virtually have no surplus. We have no money for extra money for highways. We have no extra money to help fight the crime problem. You have 200 people laid off at UMS. You have a lot of issues out there, but these Medicaid entities, select Medicaid entities and these things are well protected, and Jeremy Hutchison was shielded, protected, covered up by a multitude of things down there.
Well, I want to know. I have a theory on that. You can tell me if I'm right or wrong. But does it all go back to 2013 when the state essentially commits itself to Obamacare Medicaid expansion, and you have all of this money, that $2 billion that goes to hospitals and Medicaid entities and insurance companies and everything else, and then they're able to tithe a portion of that government money back to PACs, and those PACs support politicians. But when you have to have that vote, and we were told at the time, well, we're all Republicans, and we're conservatives, but on this one issue of Obamacare, we just believe, just this one time, we need to give money to insurance companies. Do people like Dismang and Hendren and Asa, do they turn a blind eye to people like John Woods and Jake Files and Jeremy Hutchinson because they desperately need that one vote on that one issue to keep Blue Cross Blue Shield happy and all the healthcare interests? I mean, is that really why they just don't say anything? Because the possibility of a senator having to resign and a new senator who maybe doesn't believe in giving $2 billion to insurance companies is a good thing? I mean, is that why they turn a blind eye, because they need that one vote on this one issue?
Yeah, I think it's bigger. I think this, as somebody that came in 2007, I felt like 2007 and 8 were as clean of sessions or time that I was down there, and then in 9 you could start seeing. I mean, if you look at the Cooper plea deal, if you look at the Wilkins, I mean, the Democrats were in control. This stuff was going on in different avenues, but they were not, as widespread as it is today. But it started growing then, and then as Republicans took over, you see somebody like Cranford, who went from the Democrats, he went to Republicans. I mean, you look at, next thing you know, it's popping out. Gilbert Baker is getting money from Faith and Freedom. Look at what all he's been written about that he's received, and that don't count what we may or may not know more. Then you look at it changed from when Gilbert went out. It then shifted to Michael Lamoureux and Jeremy Hutchinson, and it shifted to John Woods, and then it's possibly shifted to others. And they just kept seeing time after time they could legislate their way into avenues of revenue to take care of the friends. And then once they came up with the plan or whatever it is, they just had to go out and sell it. And once again, so many people swallow it down there. I mean, they just seem to think that somehow there's this honest, clean, everybody, 99% of them down there are good, that kind of thing. And, look at the waste, fraud, and abuse that's knocked a lot of Medicaid people out of millions of dollars that we were programs, the different things, the selling of this or that. And once you start that, especially more so in Medicaid, if you don't build a highway out there, what makes people mad and all that, once you set up these Medicaid streams of hundreds of millions, $1 billion, whatever it is, once you set it up, they know you can't get it back out. And that's what's happened. And they're taking care of their friends, and the media nicely just covers it all up for them.
Wow. Yeah, you're right. I agree with you, Brian. It's a lot bigger than what my hypothesis was. Well,
$500,000 just in one senator and one thing. I mean, look how it's grown from a $30,000 loan to this or that to now one entity, $500,000.
Yeah, and Rusty Cranford, according to the FBI, tried to have a guy murdered. I mean, it's really it's a big deal. The leaps that people are making are certainly exponential.
Yeah, it's going up, and it wouldn't surprise me if things. But I think that there's things that the members need to disclose. I mean, we need to go back the last 5 years and start saying these bills that didn't get passed, that kept getting defeated. Guess what? There's a reason why now they kept getting defeated.
Yeah,
and I think that there's needs to be, and people just need to, say, hey, have I done business with the entity that receives Medicaid? I mean, certainly the bills that I filed and everything would have made Jeremy, expose what he did, or he should have. But Jake files $80,000 wire transfer. There's bills out there that would have forced him to disclose that instead of it coming out in a court document.
Yeah.
So.
Well, Brian, I appreciate your stand, and I hope we can do this again soon, because I think we're going to have more developments on this, and there's going to be more examples of where Brian King was right all along, and I appreciate your service. Thanks for calling in.
All right. Thanks, Paul.
All righty. Senator Brian King, everybody. This is Conduit News Radio. We're going to take a break and be back in just a moment.
This is Representative Dan Sullivan with the Liberty Moment. From the beginning, authors of our Constitution, Bill of Rights, Declaration of Independence, and the Federalist Papers advocated the general election of people who possess wisdom, discernment, and loyalty to their constituents. Why? The people expect their representatives to uphold their promises. The representatives recognize the honor bestowed by these constituents. Advancement comes from their followers, not the government. Elections are frequent, and accountability is a compelling factor to loyalty and support from constituents. From a July 5th, 1929 speech by President Calvin Coolidge. This is Representative Dan Sullivan with the Liberty Moment.
Paid for by Sullivan for Arkansas. Russellville-based firearms manufacturer Omega are making clones of the most notable German firearms in the world. These delayed rotor-lock firearms have been and are currently used by law enforcement and military worldwide. At Omega, they manufacture their guns right here in Arkansas and produce the best reproduction in the marketplace that comes with a complete 5-year warranty. At Omega, they take firearm manufacturing seriously and offer discounts to active and retired law enforcement. Whether you're using Omega firearms to defend the public, defend your family, or for target practice, Omega has your back. For pricing, go to omega-guns.com. That's omega-guns.com. If you're like me, you believe that small business is the heart of Arkansas's economic engine, and it should be viewed that way by the politicians in Little Rock. Conduit for Commerce also believes, like you and I believe, policies that achieve less regulation and lower taxation help small business in Arkansas thrive. Other policies like small, constitutionally consistent government and reducing citizen dependency on government keeps it from growing and expanding its influence on our daily lives. Conduit for Commerce works every day to educate the general public and legislators on these important priorities in the name of Arkansas small business. By the way, contributions to Conduit for Commerce are tax deductible. Log on now to conduitforcommerce.org and click on Contact Us on the right side of the page. That's conduitforcommerce.org. Go there now and learn the facts on protecting small business in Arkansas.
Need your daily news fix? Don't forget to tune in to Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the program. Phone number is 870-275-9799. That's 870-275-9799. If you missed the first hour, you need to go back and watch it or listen to it because the Attorney General Leslie Rutledge did finally issue her opinion in response to Senator Linda Collins Smith's question about is there any penalty for carrying a weapon without a concealed handgun permit. The Attorney General admits there is no such penalty. There is no provision. There is no punishment in the law for carrying a weapon without a permit. But she goes on to make it a convoluted mess and invites the legislature to essentially revisit the law. And I think that's a huge mistake because the law is clear. We just have to have leaders who are willing to go against the status quo. And right now that status quo is Asa Hutchinson protecting the Arkansas State Police budget in the form of these fees that are, basically selling your rights back to you. And so many people think you have to have it, and you don't. And that's what's really sad here. And now it's less clear than it was, according to the people in positions of power. The law is still clear. There's a reason why prosecutors aren't prosecuting people when there is a misinformed law enforcement officer that arrests somebody with possession of a weapon, because they have to prove unlawful intent. So we talked about that most of the hour at 6 o'clock. Had a great interview with Mr. Dan Bourne from the Patriots of X746. So I would highly encourage you. Also look for this Brian King interview that we just did to be on our YouTube channel, and go to Conduit News YouTube channel and please click subscribe, and also go ahead and click the little bell right beside the subscribe button so that you get notified when we put up new videos, like shorter videos and things like that. We would really appreciate that. It would help us as we're on the road to be discriminated against. When I have something tells me that YouTube would not like our parody on self-identity very much, right, Joe? Don't you think they would say that would be hate speech? I do not self-identify as a dead person, right? I think at that point they would say it's hate speech. But no, you can claim that you want to define your own reality. You can claim that. I get to define my own reality, or it's kind of the I think, therefore I am type situation. But the reality, the truth is that there is an objective truth, and there is objective moral standards, and there is actual reality. Okay, and that's why we made that parody, by the way, because I thought, well, there's nothing more certain in life than death and taxes. And so somebody might say, I don't identify as a dead person, but just because you want to try to define your own reality, I don't identify as a dead person, it doesn't mean that you're not going to die. Just like I don't identify as a man, I identify as a woman, but that doesn't change the fact that biologically you're a man. Arkansas, be safe.